episode 295 of the CRICKETher Weekly. How are you doing this week, Sid?
Okay.
Been enjoying some WBBL? In fact, I know you have, because which team do you support, Sid?
The Hurricanes.
And who's top of the table right now in WBBL?
The Hurricanes.
Exactly. What's going on? I thought the Hurricanes were meant to be the perennial losers.
Yeah, they kind of torn up. Well, they've torn up the script again, really. I mean, it's like what they've done is they've basically imported the Hobart model, haven't they? In terms of their domestic, the Tasmania model, the Tasmania Tigers model. So, you know, for years and years, Tasmania Tigers were the team that nobody wants to play for because, you know, most players were still living in Sydney. Even the ones that played for Tasmania were living in Sydney and they were just flying out to Tasmania for games because, you know, for a lot of young people, they didn't really want to live in Tasmania.
I think Melbourne as well. Melbourne's nearer, isn't it?
But I think a lot of them were in Sydney for whatever reason.
I can just hear all the Australians screaming in case I got the geography wrong.
Well, no, I know that a lot of them were in Sydney.
Okay.
Anyway, they were the perennial losers, and you know, then they kind of built this strategy, which started with Sally Ann Briggs when she was the kind of head coach of their women's team. She's now, of course, moved to be a kind of higher up in the organisation. But the strategy of kind of hiring older players, you know, getting them to come out and actually live in Tasmania and be part of that. And they, you know, they've built a team that's won WNCL titles. They seem to have now got a load of those players also playing. I mean, players like they've done things like get Lizelle Lee and have her around for so long that Lizelle Lee is now actually an Australian.
Is she?
So yes.
Oh wow,
so
that's really cool.
Lizelle Lee is no longer an overseas player. She's an Australian player.
That's not fair. They can't just hoover up all the world's best players like that. They've got enough to start with. So
you know, it's the team of grandmas kind of thing. But you know, they've picked up the best grandmas, and they have. That's how they've done it. You know, you've got your Lizelle Lees and your Nick Careys, and you know your
all these grandmas in their 30s. Yeah. Okay. Now we have been able to watch it, Sid, but only this year, only because we've still got our Sky subscription, which we got during the World Cup, right? That's the deal this time. Yeah.
So I think this is actually incredibly interesting and significant that this year, for the first time in this country, the games are only available, all of them, if you pay for them. So in previous years, Sky have picked up the rights to them, but a lot of games Sky haven't broadcast, and so they've been available free to air. They've been online, rather than free to air. So you've been able to go onto Cricket Australia's website and log in, and you can watch the game as long as you've registered. This year you can't do that anymore. Sky have got all of them, and they're televising all of them. So you have to pay, and I think it's really interesting because it's a really interesting indication of where we are in women's cricket. And we've kind of always known that ultimately, if we want the female players to be earning the same kinds of money as the male players, then the games are going to have to go behind a paywall, unfortunately. You know, a lot of women's cricket fandom has been built up, but because the games are freely accessible, and that means, you know, you don't have to pay, because it's quite expensive, it's £35 a month to pay for Sky, because in this country you have to pay for Sky, which effectively means you have to pay for Premier League football. There's no, I just want the cricket, you have to pay for the Premier League football. So, you know, you pay that, and you know, that starts to really add up when you start paying that for several months. But ultimately, all of the games that we've got in this country as well are going to need to be behind a paywall, because that's the only genuine source of income. So, you know, you can talk about, you know, crowds through the gates, and you can talk about sponsorship and those sorts of things, but they're drops in the ocean compared to the money coming in from TV. So it's kind of a harbinger of what's to come, I think. And it's just something that I think is really interesting that Sky have chosen this point to say, okay, from now, you know, we're not going to give away any of it for free. We think that if we put them all behind a paywall, enough people like Sid and Raf and, you know, other people that are out there will continue to pay their Sky subs in order to watch these. It's
an interesting kind of indicator now of the growth, I suppose, of WBBL and the stage that we're at.
And the growth of women's cricket, and the fact that they think that women's cricket is something that people will pay for. Yeah. Because that's what Sky are looking for. They're looking for people, they're really, really explicitly, their business model is about, you know, getting people to pay subs. And if someone pays a sub for one thing, they don't really care about the rest of it. So, you know, it's another one of those ones where women's cricket kind of fits in a same sort of another bubble, a bit like rugby league in this country. So rugby league in this country is, you know, a huge sport in a few isolated places. A bit like it is in Australia, I suppose, but it's you know, there are a few isolated towns in the north, but Sky are prepared to put a lot of money into rugby league because there are loads of people in those towns that will subscribe only for the rugby league. And that's what they're hoping is going to happen with the women's cricket, I think.
Okay, that's really interesting.
But, you know, basically the other thing is just, you know, get ready to pay more money because this is going to be the future.
So what you're saying is that in order to get bang for my buck, I need to start getting up at 3 a.m. to watch all of the WBBL matches.
Well, and all the rain as well. We've had like 2 rain-affected matches today, for example.
Yeah, to be fair,
the Hurricanes match today they didn't finish it because they only won on DLS.
I know you said during the World Cup that they could have played the games in Manchester, but given the weather in the UK this week, I don't think that the WBBL would have been any better if it had been tried to be played here. Anyway, breaking news, Sid, and this is going to come as a surprise to regular viewers and listeners to the CRICKETher Weekly. The ICC have done something that we actually agree with.
Yeah. And
we're going to give them some credit for. Now, I'm just struggling a little bit here, Sid, because this is rather an unusual occurrence. But on 20th of November, the ICC are running a new tournament, or that's the day that it starts. It's the Women's Emerging Nations Trophy. It involves 8 teams, so it's being hosted in Thailand, so they're obviously participating, and the other 7 teams are the Netherlands, Papua New Guinea, UAE, Scotland, Namibia, Tanzania, and Uganda. And it feels like quite an important move that the ICC has done here, right, Sid?
Yeah, I think it's an incredible positive, and I think it is really important to call out when they're doing the right sort of thing. You know, we've repeatedly said that for these kind of second-tier nations, and you know, there's kind of, I mean, even within the second-tier nations, right, we know there's actually a couple of tiers. So, you know, it depends, and sometimes, you know, Ireland might be included in the second tier, they might not. Scotland as well may not. They're the in-between sides. But the second-tier nations, the likes of Papua New Guinea and things, you know, what do we want in order for them to develop? You know, and people will say, you know, ideally we want them to be like playing in World Cups and things. But at the moment, sending teams like that to World Cups is completely futile because they will lose every match by 150 runs and it's just not going to do anybody any good. What they need is proper competition, especially as the big challenge remains that, you know, these countries are never going to have solid full-time professional domestic setups. It's just not going to happen
because there isn't the money,
because that money just doesn't exist. And
I mean, it would if we actually distributed cricket's global income more equitably, but that's going to happen
not going to happen over the month
past our window.
So you know, what the ICC have done here is they've gone, well, you know, we've got a problem that everyone accepts that there's a problem, so what can we actually do to address this? And by getting these teams together and giving them a proper tournament, you know, that lasts a couple of weeks where they can play several games against teams of a similar sort of standard, then that enables them to kind of grow as teams and to improve. You know, and it's still, there are huge challenges out there for these teams, not just for their domestic setups, for example, but because, for example, you know, if the best players from these teams are going to get poached by other countries, as, you know, we've seen. I mean, you know, UAE's best player, who's the best players who have emerged from UAE? Mahika. So, you know, England already poached her like 2 years ago. So, you know, and, you know, Scottish players have been poached by England, as we know. But, you know, what the ICC have done, basically, the people in there have realised there's a problem and they've done what they can do to address it. There's some stuff they can't do, but, you know, cheers to them for doing this. And this is the way to try and improve things for these teams and to get them all closer to the standard where they can start to actually compete in World Cups and be like Scotland and go along to a World Cup. And, you know, yeah, of course, Scotland probably aren't going to win many games in World Cups either. But, you know, if you're going to a World Cup like Scotland and, you know, losing every game, but, you know, losing it by, you know, reasonable margins, but not absolutely getting hammered into the ground, that's okay. You're developing. Where you're not developing is if we're sending teams to World Cups and they're losing T20s by 150 runs. That doesn't serve anybody. So, great stuff. Okay, really interesting. Thank you. Now, Sid, on a different note, we did have a question come in by email this week from Graham. He says, "Thanks again for the pod. Always entertaining and honest, even when you guys disagree with each other." That's nice. Here's his question. Why do you think so many England batters are vulnerable to the in-swinging delivery? There have been multiple examples in recent weeks, including Jones, Beaumont, Dunkley and even Sciver-Brunt, showing a lack of ability or technique to deal with the ball coming back in. Is this linked to the fact that the English coaches have ruined the naturally talented in-swing bowler in Lauren Bell? That's a little bit of a subjective judgment there from Graham, meaning our batters don't consistently face that delivery in the nets, or is it a lack of quality coaching? Sid, over to you. What's the answer? I think that there definitely is an element of you don't face those deliveries very much. I mean, one of the things with swing bowling in particular, right, that kind of bugs me about when people talk about swing bowling, is that you'll talk to bowling coach, and every bowling coach thinks they know, oh well, I can teach my bowlers to bowl swing bowling, right? They'll tell you that, but my reaction is that these people can't tell you how to swing. No one actually knows how swing bowling works, really. There have been a lot of, if you look around, there are a lot of theories, in terms of like the physics of it and, the way that you have to hold the ball and the way that it works. And yes, a lot of bowling coaches will go, well, I can teach you to swing bowl. But I mean, it's like, you can't. Because if you could teach swing bowling, then we'd have 40 bowlers in, domestic cricket in this country that are swinging it, and we haven't.
Yeah.
Australia would have 40 bowlers in WNCL that are swinging it, and they haven't. There are a tiny number of players that sort of half, crack what they need to do it. But even those players often can't really do it consistently, and there's something about conditions or something about the particular ball, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, So swing bowling remains this kind of mystery that nobody really understands. We are not seeing a lot of swing bowling, in the nets because of that, because we don't have those swing bowlers. And, it's incredibly destructive, and it's destructive for everybody, to be fair. So, everybody was having problems against Renuka at the World Cup, for example, because she's one of the people that has kind of worked out how to do that for herself. But, what she couldn't do is really tell you how she does it. I mean, she could go, well, yeah, I sort of hold the ball like this, and then I throw it, and then, it comes out, and then it swings. But she doesn't really know what she's doing in a way that would be able to coach anyone else to do it. Because if she did know that, she could make millions by coaching other people to do it, because it is such a killer skill. So I think it's partly that everybody has problems.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that at the moment, the English batters are just generally struggling against basically any form of bowling. And sorry, it sounds harsh, but it's kind of true. We've talked a lot, and the media have talked a lot about England's issues against spin, because that is particularly noticeable. But I think that one of the issues is that for the last 2.5 years, essentially, any development of kind of technique against any form of delivery was sacrificed at the altar of kind of aggression and let's be entertaining, let's be inspiring and entertaining, rather than actually focus on playing each ball on its merits. And that applies to swing bowling just as much as it does spin bowling. So my feeling is that the kind of England batters' numbers against swing will not be particularly good, just because, generally speaking, their batting at the moment is not particularly good and their technique is not particularly strong, with probably a couple of honourable exceptions. So it's a broader problem than just swing or spin. It's about your kind of mentality at the crease.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of preemptive stroke play that goes on, that that you watch the ball come out of hand and you go, okay, right, my brain knows how I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this way, and
I'm just going to play a ramp.
Yeah,
and it doesn't matter what the bowler does. I'm just going to play a ramp.
And there can be some value in kind of instinctively just going, well, I just kind of instinctively know that that's the shot I'm going to play. But then if you get an unexpected delivery, one that does swing a lot, or one that that is going to move off the pitch, that's going to leave you vulnerable to that.
Yeah, so that's a couple of potential answers. If anyone else has got any theories, do comment below the line, because I think it is a really interesting point that Graham raises. And actually, I think that some of those England batters may well find themselves vulnerable over the next year or so to potentially the next generation who are up and coming, and that sort of leads us neatly on to the next topic of this week's podcast, which is that the ECB have announced what they're calling the winter pathway squads. So there's an under-19 group, and there's also a kind of performance programme, which we think is sort of about developing players. They've selected players who they think they have the potential to develop so that they can then go on and play international cricket. Just a shout out to a couple of the under-19s. It's great to see the two most recent winners of the Cricket Society's Charlotte Edwards Award for Best Under-16 Schoolgirl Cricketer in England actually breaking into this under-19 pathway squad. So Venus Wirapuli from Lancashire and Eve O'Neill from Hampshire. So congratulations to both of those, who I feel a little bit of a connection to, having met them both at the last 2 Cricket Society lunches, and will be continuing to follow their trajectories.
You might remember from last week's episode, we talked about Venus and about her award-winning exploits.
Yeah, and approximately a year ago, we will also have been singing the praises of Eve O'Neill. I appreciate they're both leg spinners, so they're potentially competing against each other, but that's fair enough. But there was an interesting quote from Richard Bedbrook in the press release, who says, the ultimate ambition is to provide each player with an opportunity to push their case for future England selection. So on that basis, I thought it might actually just be interesting to think about who out of those players who have been selected for the performance programme might actually be genuinely pushing for a spot in an England 11 in however many months' time it is. It feels like absolutely ages looking out the window. It's pouring with rain and it's grim and it's winter here. But next English summer, essentially, who might be pushing for a spot in a full England 11, Sid? I mean, the obvious one is Davina Perrin, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Davina Perrin is, it has to be said, not having much fun at WBBL at the moment. She's had quite a tough start. But yeah, she does need time, and I hope that the Melbourne Renegades keep some faith with her. She's at the point where there's kind of a risk that they're going to go, oh, maybe we'll drop her down the order. She's been opening the batting, which is obviously what she's been doing at home. So fingers crossed that they keep faith and keep her at the top and give her that opportunity to kind of bed into the role there.
But almost regardless, given her innings in the semi-final of the 100 last English summer, she is going to be like in an England T20 shirt this summer, right?
So,
Next
yes.
summer, I mean, yeah. In terms of other batters, potentially sort of pushing for a spot, we'll talk about wicketkeeper batters in a minute, but just pure batters. Jodie Grucock, Ella McCacken, and then your girl Grace Scrivens is in this squad. I think that Ella McCacken is really well placed, assuming that she can stay injury free, to actually really be pushing for a spot. And I think that it was very unfortunate, the timing of her injury last season, because Charlotte Edwards, has obviously mentored her for many years at the Vipers, and kind of brought her through the ranks there. And she did have a really excellent start to the season, to the extent that Lottie actually mentioned her name in a press conference, and then just got injured at the wrong time for being selected in any of those England squads.
Yeah, I mean, if she played the whole domestic season, she'd have almost certainly would have been the leading domestic run scorer, I suspect. I think she would have scored more runs than Emma Lamb.
But I think that she might well have got a call up. And
potentially, yeah.
Anyway, so I think that she's quite likely to be breaking into senior England. I think
that she's probably going to be the one out of that group. I have to say that I feel it looks increasingly like Grace Scrivens is not going to be making her England debut in the near future, especially as it looks increasingly like Charlie Dean is going to be the next captain. This seems to have now been very quietly set in stone during the World Cup by the fact that they've gone, we'll have this rotating vice captaincy, and they've got to the World Cup and they've gone, no, it's Charlie Dean.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So
it was almost like
the writing's on the wall there.
Charlotte Edwards wanted a few months just to kind of try a few people out, and then she's basically concluded, no, Charlie Dean is going to be my next England
I was right
captain.
all along when I told Sid about 6 or 7 years ago that Charlie Dean would be an England captain.
Well, there you go. You've got the inside track there, Sid. I wish you'd actually been telling me that when I was writing all kinds of nonsense for The Guardian last year about the England captaincy. Anyway, good luck to Charlie Dean. I think that the trouble is that everything is going to be so focused on the T20 World Cup in England, and that's not really Grace Scrivens' format. So it might have to wait.
I mean, if it was up to me, I'd be bringing her into the one-day side next
what a surprise,
season,
Sid. Everyone's gasping in surprise that if it was up to you, she'd be in the squad. So, okay.
But I think that her inclusion in this is because she's got the potential still to do that.
Absolutely.
And I just think that there's still more progress probably needs to be made before that, they're going to kind of wake up to that. And, without the captaincy, the case is definitely weaker.
Okay. Interesting. Now let's talk about wicket keepers. Sid. We've got 3
wicket-keeper
here.
batters. I mean, that's the key to it, isn't it?
Okay, but we've got 3 in there who I think are kind of fighting it out to be the the successor to Amy Jones, essentially. And more, that needs to be something that England are actually setting in stone now, really. They seem to have not given up on Bess Heath, but I think that Charlotte Edwards and Richard Bedbrook and everyone else who's involved in this setup are very much trying to looking a little bit more widely. So the three candidates in this performance squad are Kira Chatterley from Surrey, Ree Southby from Hampshire, and Seren Smale from Lancashire. So 3 candidates.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely a clear divide, isn't there, between Rihanna Southby and the other two, right?
In terms of, well, Southby's the best keeper.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that she's the best keeper.
I'm sorry anyone who's watching from Surrey or Lancs, and it's going to sound like we're just hopelessly biased in favour of Hampshire, but I think that Ree Southby is the best keeper of the 3, but you have to balance that out against the fact that, you know, probably Seren Smale's got the longest levers and is the most capable T20 batter of the 3, and Kira Chatterley's probably got the best batting technique.
Yeah, I mean, Kira Chatterley's really forced her way in this year, because, I mean, she wasn't even selected originally for the 100, was she? And then she wound up, you know, being a bit of a star in it. Yeah. And, you know, that's the kind of thing where she's old as well. She's nearly 27, if not 27.
Oh, goodness, Sid. So I do apologise to anyone watching this who's over a certain age, who's just sat there going, that's not old. You've talked about people in their 30s being grannies. Now you're saying Kira Chatterley needs to save up for false teeth. What's next?
But yeah, I mean, she's older than you would normally expect people to be in a development squad. But I think it's an indication of the fact that she probably is the best batter of those 3 at the moment. So, you know, if Amy Jones were to get injured, then, you know, she would definitely have an opportunity to step in there. The thing it must be really frustrating to be Rihanna Southby there. Can we go back to her for a minute? Because she has worked incredibly hard over the last few years. Ever since she came to Vipers. As it was at the time, you know, and I don't think that's a coincidence, because Charlotte Edwards is someone that gets hard work out of people, and you know, she's improved so much about her wicket keeping, not so much the kind of the really good bits, because she was always capable of the spectacular and the kind of showy stuff, but where she fell down wicket keeping wise was kind of long-term concentration on a lot of the basics. So she'd keep for 10 overs and then she'd lose the basics, and she'd let, you know, balls through her legs and things like this, and that's been cut out now because she's worked really hard on her concentration. She's done stuff like sit there for literally an hour and have a bowling machine send balls at her and catch them, bowling machine, ball catch, in order to improve her ability to be able to concentrate for long periods of time. And she has really improved her batting, but of course the problem is that everyone else is improving their batting as well. Yeah. So, you know, even though her batting is now definitely not, you know, she's not batting at number 11 anymore, probably actually in an England side, she probably wouldn't be, I mean, if an England side with her and Lauren Bell and Lauren Filer in would basically have 3 number 11s from an international perspective.
I think that's a little bit harsh, but I do think that she's not going to, they've currently got Amy Jones opening the batting for England in ODI cricket, haven't they? And previously Jones has been batting more at like maybe 5, I think. So she wouldn't probably be batting that high. She'd be like a lower middle order. So okay, well,
sorry, Ree, but
okay,
I think, you know, the county level definitely, but not.
Well, she's been opening. She's been opening in some formats for Hampshire.
I think that she'd be below Eccleston, below Dean.
Okay, well,
in that batting, she'd be above Lauren Bell.
I mean, I think what will be interesting is to see, because I think that. I hope that Charlotte Edwards will be very aware that this is a decision that she needs to make, and she actually needs to almost like. She needs to like start putting, what do you call it? Put your bread in one basket. Put your, like rather than hedging bets, and because they actually need somebody who, if Amy Jones broke a leg in the middle of a World Cup, wasn't just a Tammy Beaumont who had happened to bring her wicket-keeping gloves with her and left them in the bag for the duration of the practice. Anyway, bowlers, Sid. Now, there are some bowlers, obviously, in this performance squad, but this is kind of where you would think that actually England are pretty well stocked at the moment, and that the bowling is much stronger and is in a much better place than the batting is. So Alexa Stonehouse potentially kind of being talked about as a future opening bowler.
Yeah, I like Alexa Stonehouse.
Yeah.
She's a decent batter as well. And so I think there's definitely potential there. But she's nowhere near where Lauren Bell or Lauren Filer are. And that's going to be the case with any seamers.
Then, of course, Tilly Courtine-Coleman, who was being talked about by people like Nasser Hussain during the World Cup. I think because she had quite an exciting 100 tournament and has just generally had quite a high profile couple of years, actually, even though she's still very young.
Yeah. I can't see that one happening for her either.
She's got to displace one of like 4 spinners who are world class and who look very solid right now.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a number of problems. First of all, again, she's another number 11 batter. She's very young. She might well, sort that out. Danny Wyatt was a number 11 batter at the age that Tilly Courtine-Coleman now is. But at the moment, that is an issue. And at the end of the day, as we've just said, if Charlie Dean's the next captain, Charlie Dean is going to be in the T20 squad. And in fact, that is going to be really interesting, the first T20 squad of next time, because if Charlie Dean is in it, that is definitely an indication that that is where they're going with this. It's the biggest tell there's going to be. She's with Charlie Dean as captain. Then you go, well, you've got Sophie Eccleston. So at best, you're going to be selected as a third spinner, and there are already a couple of candidates ahead of her there. So I just can't see that happening for her in the next year.
Okay, really interesting. If there's anyone that we haven't mentioned, which I'm sure that there's lots of people at home going, why haven't you talked about so-and-so? Then again, do comment below the line and maybe we can read some of those out next time. Finally this week, Sid, I just wanted to mention that the ECB have actually released a new equity report. So we're, 2.5 years on from the original Independent Commission for Equity actually producing their report, which was very
detailed.
I was going to say very damning, actually, of the ECB.
Lots of D's, detailed and damning.
As an organisation, and of kind of English and Welsh cricket in terms of like the sort of the cultures of those, and basically found that there was widespread sexism, racism, and classism. So this is meant to be a sort of independent assessment of what progress cricket has made since the ICEC reported. And the ECB hired a consultancy called Sport Structures to carry out this report. It's a bit odd though, because they kind of say in the intro, here's what Sport Structures thought, and then the rest of it is written from the perspective of the ECB. So it's like, well, we've done this and we've done that and we've done this other thing. And that's not, to me, that's not an independent report. I don't know why it's been framed like that, but it doesn't read to me like an independent assessment. Okay.
Can I just interrupt very briefly here to say that what you guys out there are seeing here from RAF is really interesting, because everybody else that's reported on this that I've seen so far has just basically regurgitated the press release. RAF has actually read the report. So
this is kind of my wheelhouse.
It is, but you guys are getting something from that's not just the ECB's kind of spin on that report, because the ECB's press release is very much like, well, actually progress is quite good because 17% of board directors that are left-handers that were elected on the Thursday actually are ethnic minorities. And you're like, you've cherry-picked that quite hard. You've cherry-picked that, straight off the tree in cherry season.
Yeah. It does feel it does feel from reading the report like and I certainly agree that progress has been made, but interestingly, in terms of like the numbers, and I've paid particular attention here to what's happening in terms of, first of all, within like women's and girls cricket, but also the progress of getting more women into senior positions within cricket, which are two separate things, related arguably, but not totally the same. But there is also a lot in the report about race, about there's some stuff about sexuality, there's some stuff about disability cricket as well. So it's worth tracking this down and actually going and having a read of it yourself. But it starts with a statement from Sport Structures. The professionalisation of women's and girls cricket is reshaping visibility and opportunity across the game. Would agree with that. However, investment and support are not yet consistent. and expectations of delivery often exceed the resources available. It's a really interesting statement. But I tell you what, I've read the whole report and nowhere is that statement expanded upon and they actually explain what they mean. So they've got this thing at the beginning that's like, I don't know, 750 words from Sport Structures, which is their independent assessment of the game. And then the rest of it is like, as I say, the ECB saying, well, we've done this and here are some stats. But nobody actually says, what does it mean when they say expectations of delivery exceed the resources available? Which counties are you talking about? Like, which resources are not available? Because how does that fit with the ECB's suggestion that the new county partnership agreement was being predicated on the resource distribution being equal? Yeah. So, okay, we're not doing equal pay, I get that. But access to coaching, gyms, other like pitches, other resources should all be being done equitably now.
Yeah, so, which is why Surrey are playing all their home games at the Oval, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. But I mean, that statement just suggests that Sport Structures don't think that's happening, but nobody says anything more about it. It's so frustrating. I know, but if this is meant to be an equity report, why is nobody telling me anything below this very vague, actually rather bland, it is critical, but it doesn't give me any detailed information, this statement. Okay, so that's got me a bit annoyed, Sid, honestly. There's a whole chapter on women's and girls cricket, and there's some really interesting numbers about increased participation of women and girls within cricket in England and Wales. But there are numbers about women's teams, and then there are numbers about women's clubs. And there are twice the number of women's teams as there are clubs. So there are 3,000 women's teams and only 1,500 women's clubs, or clubs with women's sections, as they're described. So are some women being counted twice somehow if they play in a team and they play for a club? What I really want is some total participation numbers of adult women participating in softball and hardball cricket. They're not in the report, okay? I've also tried looking for these because I'm writing a book about women's cricket, and the final chapter is about what's happening right now, and I can't find these numbers anywhere. They're really difficult to get hold of. I'm sorry, but the cynic in me really thinks that some of these numbers are covering up the fact that I don't think participation levels at grassroots recreational level are still particularly good. Anyway, just also finally, the ECB in this report admit there's been no progress in gender diversity in chair and CEO roles in professional counties. So what they try to do is they say, oh, well, at recreational level, we've got a few more women involved and that's great. But at the most senior levels within English cricket, nothing has improved. In fact, by some counts, it's actually got worse because we did have a female chief exec at Notts who has just recently stepped down. Okay, so that's not great. And
it's great if you're a middle-aged white man.
Yeah, but even with all of this focus on this, it still feels like progress is really kind of minute and really slow, and it just goes to show that these cultures whereby cricket is a sport run by men are going to be so difficult to disrupt. And I wish that we could have a little bit more honesty about that actually from the people at the ECB who are releasing reports like this. There's not really any explanation offered as to what's going on here. They just say, oh well, it's going to take a little while. Well, what's the problem? Tell me more. Tell me more. I did read this entire 50-page report, but I'm not satisfied. Anyway, sorry, we probably better wrap up there. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Do comment below the line. We read all your comments. We love to hear what you think, and we will see you in a week's time. Bye for now.
Bye.